Hi, Mel. Certainly glad that you could join this, and we really appreciate your willingness to provide us with a commentary. The I've known Mel for a long time, and her experience over the years has been with uh, as a international corporate director at Freeport, and that I've always relied on her for insights on the operations of China and Africa and almost anywhere else. And so, Mel, we appreciate your willingness to provide a commentary on what we've been talking about today.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate you including me once again in the Mining Law Summit. You know that I've always felt that it's a important discussion forum for not just the mining industry, but as we see in today's discussion, even areas beyond direct mining. So, as I look upon sort of the arc of our different discussions today, a couple of unifying themes appear to me. The first of which is that we are literally living in unprecedented times of unprecedented opportunity as well as unprecedented risk. So, turning to the opportunity side first, I think, particularly in terms of the mining industry, our first presentation was quite outstanding in outlining the the current means by which the administration in Washington is attempting to transform a lot of the US regulatory structure in order to meet a moment of unique opportunity. Because, and for a host of valid reasons, over the last 50, 60 years, the United States has pretty much been unable to develop as a major mining country. When you look at us compared to Canada, for instance, or to Australia, you can clearly see that we made a decision to not actively exploit the resource base available to us. And I repeat, that's for a host of perfectly valid reasons. Those are decisions as a society that we are entitled to make. However, all decisions and all foregone opportunities also carry with them consequences and risks. So today's, I would say, face off with China epitomizes those consequences and risks because, particularly over the last 5 years, we have come to realize that by ceding that mining space to others, we have also ceded a significant amount of control over our own destiny and our own national security. As the world has become more technologically dependent and continues to become more so at an accelerating rate, mining, and particularly mining for the so-called critical minerals, is fundamentally vital. I frequently hold my cell phone up at this point and say, how many people have one of these or something similar? And almost everybody, of course, raises their hand. And I say, congratulations, you're holding 7 rare earths, gold, silver, platinum, and various other elements in your hand. And if those had not been mined, you would not be holding a miniature computer and a communication device that is so reminiscent of Star Trek that sometimes it freaks me out. So we now have to decide, again, hopefully, as a society, how we want to respond to this moment of opportunity. Because, as frequently happens, various paths lie open to us. and the administration is attempting to pursue several of them simultaneously. The first of those, of course, is to develop U.S. natural resources. The actions taken by the administration to fundamentally set aside a majority of the regulations which have slowed development of mines and have made America one of the most difficult venues in which to build a new mine have been at least temporarily set aside. As our presenter rightly noted, one of the risks associated with this is that a new administration comes in and flips the switch and everything becomes different again, leaving companies scrambling to cover both real operational risk and also reputational risk. Because it would be very easy for a company that surged aggressively ahead, utilizing these new opportunities, to subsequently be accused of not having shown sufficient respect for this planet on which we live and the people among whom mining takes place. Now, obviously, one way to diminish that operational risk would be for Congress to codify the changes enacted through executive orders into a new body of law. And I leave to my sage lawyer colleagues the debate around whether and how quickly, or if at all, that should take place. It's associated to the question of why does the United States not reinstate a mining agency or a mining bureau? It certainly pragmatically seems that if we were going down the road of codifying these sorts of sweeping regulatory changes, that we should therefore also have a regulatory body dedicated to the industry. But again, I'm going to leave that just lying out there for people to regard at the moment. So another possible avenue to address the opportunity risk environment that the administration is pursuing is to look for partnerships, or in the new parlance, make deals with other countries, trusted allies. The irony of history, of course, is that China was a trusted ally in a period of time when Japan was our foe, just as one example. And now Japan is a trusted ally and China is our foe. This illustrates the inherent difficulty of trying to predicate long-term national security decisions on elusive factors like alliances. Now, a lot of people in the audience are thinking to themselves, but Australia has always been with us. And that's true. The Australians have been in every conflict that the United States has ever been in. So yes, they've always been with us, where Canada and the UK have not. Okay. Nonetheless, generally speaking, the Commonwealth countries and the United States of America have a long history of alliance that is bound by shared values and shared vision. Unfortunately, some of those shared values and shared vision are being closely scrutinized at this time by our allies and by ourselves as well. But let us proceed on the assumption that today's allies are also tomorrow's allies. As was pointed out, the United States recently entered into an agreement with Australia, $8.5 billion. And a large portion of that will go to developing resources in Australia. I'm definitely not against it. I'm on the board of a couple of Australian companies. But that's a very long supply chain. And to use the old Cold War parlance, it lies within China's sphere of influence, which therefore makes it a very high risk supply chain as well. So definitely in and of and by itself, an alliance with Australia is not sufficient. And that's laying aside the question of quantities of materials needed to develop the economies and security of both countries. Logic suggests that partnerships closer to home should also be sought. Canada is an outstanding mining jurisdiction. Mexico has vast reserves, and we have already an agreement that binds us, the USMCA, the United States Mexico Canada Agreement. Currently, by the way, not coincidentally, I think, being reviewed. We also find ourselves looking in other places. Estonia is not often spoken of, but Estonia is important. It hit across the syllable. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is often spoken of, one of the most resource-rich nations on the face of the planet, not just but quality, very high grade, unlike most of the deposits, for instance, in the United States. This leads to another area of risk. We must decide what responsibility morally we are bearing in deciding where and how we are going to obtain the materials necessary to continue our technological march. The Amazon basin in Brazil has already been extremely fragilized by agricultural needs. It is now being further eroded by the mining push. In the Congo, just last week, we saw the tragedy of a tailings dam collapse that flooded neighborhoods in a major city called Kolwezi with contaminated water. It's a cobalt mine. Cobalt is one of the critical minerals. It is necessary for things like cell phones and military equipment and wind towers and semiconductors. It is a vital material. Who pays the price for the material? This is an important consideration. It is an important risk to ourselves as a people and to the actual human lives of others. That needs to be taken into account. When we look at another opportunity, it is to spring strongly ahead in the arena of innovation. I've listened with great interest to the discussions on AI because I am anything but an expert on AI. But I actually challenge the artificial intelligence itself to aid with humans in crafting it in the best way possible. Because surely, with the copious amounts of data that are available, with the copious computational capability which is available, should we not be asking AI itself, how should these centers be designed? Where are those peak demand areas that we were just discussing? How would you, AI, engineer yourself around those in order to maximize supply and assure continuity and minimize disruption? There's an opportunity in AI. There's also a risk. That risk is to the definition of human worth. Right now, when you go anywhere go to a business reception. Same three questions are always on everyone's lips. Hi, what's your name? Where do you work? What do you do? We are defining ourselves in these ways. But what is the reality? As we talk about mining space, which was a fascinating presentation to me, when we talk about mining space, we are going to be relying a lot more on robots and AI because of the conditions which are not conducive to humans. So the mining industry as an industry, whether on Earth or in space or under the ocean, has always had an advantage on the social side that it creates a lot of well-paying jobs. I do not personally think that's going to continue to be the case, nor do I think that it's going to continue to be the case in agriculture or in a lot of services industries. Already we're seeing some restaurants where, due to a shortage of wait staff, those slots are being filled by cute little robots that trundle your order out to your table. This is a profound risk that needs, again, to be carefully examined. It steps beyond a fundamental problem in this country. And that fundamental problem is we have never, not even in World War II, we have never engaged in economy-wide industrial and social engineering in the way that a China or a Soviet Union attempted to do. So we say today, oh, we need lots of processing facilities built in this country. Quick, let's run out and fertilize those, whether it's, through the JP Morgan $1 trillion fund, or whether it's DOD or in a cooperation between both, which public-private partnership is desperately needed. But we also need the magnet facilities. We need the battery makers. We need the semiconductor makers. We need the giant AI centers. We are finally beginning to realize the cost of the scope of transformation that we are attempting to undertake. And it is in the trillions, the tens of trillions of dollars. But laying aside the money, again, what should these structures look like? How can we be engineering for the future, not the past? Because right now we are engineering for the past. We are engineering to correct the mistakes that we have made over the last 50 to 60 years. That's why we need processing centers, why we need magnet makers, why we need battery factories in the West. Because collectively speaking, we, the West, gave all of that away to China because in China's long-term planning, it said to itself as a government, we understand that we will have to bear a significant environmental and social burden in order to build a global industry which will eventually position us for hegemonous control of key markets. That's called engineering for the future. And it's a very simple way of characterizing what China has done versus what we do. But simplistic or not, it goes to the heart of the matter. So for me, when I think about conclusions in terms of the areas that we've discussed today, those are primarily the ones that I think about. How can we best maximize our existing opportunities while building a defensible, sustainable, longitudinous, and broad economic and social structure that will support our technological needs and aspirations while providing moral justice, and all of that in the face of what I call the shifting global wind. By a wonderful coincidence, a huge delegation from Saudi Arabia is in Washington, D.C. these 2 days. It is led by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, a man who, until now, over the last 5 years, has more or less been considered a pariah in the West because of the allegations, which appeared to have evidentiary proof that he had a hand in the murder of a journalist because he did not like what the journalist had to say about him, essentially. But business is business. And so we have the delegation here that is going to be making significant investments in the United States to develop our industry. And we, in turn, are going to fertilize their industry, including their defense capabilities. We need to have a more comprehensive vision of future sustainability before we begin making decisions based on today's necessities. And I think that I will leave it there.
Well, thank you, Mel, for your very insightful remarks. Uh, I've always appreciated your insight on world activities. The um, I've always appreciated your ability to really look at the whole picture. You know, we've talked about the problems with the absence of any Federal Bureau of Mines. And it appears to me that the Congress has said that that's not coming back. Uh, do any of your contacts in Washington suggest otherwise?
No, unfortunately, because it runs counter to the dominant philosophy of smaller government, not bigger government. So even though it would be timely and it is, I think, operationally necessary, it's not philosophically acceptable to this administration.
Well, again, Mel, thank you very much for your summary of what we've been trying to do today. I've always appreciate your abilities of observation. And so for really for all of our participants today, thank you very much for signing on. We have always had the ability to take the recording of the Mining Law Summit and post it on YouTube. And we will very shortly, as soon as we get the mechanics of that done, we'll post it on YouTube and give all of the participants or all of the registrants that link so that you can review what we've said today or take in anything that you may have missed. So thanks again, and we have been successfully completed our 10th annual Mining Law Summit. So thank you very much.